All right, so I want to talk today. If you've noticed on the schedule, there's a different theme for each of the 5 days. So I'll start out the call each day with a brief talk. Today's about the purpose of college. Tomorrow we'll talk about the real benefits of college. The next day we'll talk about what a good college student, what makes a good college student, and then a good college professor. And then finally, the necessity of college, which should be these should hopefully will all be. I think they're all interesting talks, but um, yeah. And then we'll have the college that we'll be able to present. All right. So today, the purpose of college. Yeah, when I was thinking about this, of course, I had to figure out, well, what is everybody else saying? So I Googled it, and just did what you want to do. And it's interesting to me that when you look at most of the kind of the online rankings for schools, one of the primary categories is it a party school? So apparently, at least some people think that the purpose of college is to find some place to have a good party. Um, but outside of that kind of interesting answer, most of it is going to be based on how the skills that it offers, that it teaches you. And a lot of times this has to do with something a particular kind of job, right? Like engineering or teaching or medicine or law. Business is a popular one. And then the other kind of side of that coin is the credentials that it offers. It offers you a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or whatever, or some sort of certificate, or it makes you eligible for kind of the next phase, right? So you get the bachelor's degree so that you can go on to the master's degree and then on to the PhD if that's what you're looking for. So the purpose of college seems to be either have a good time, attend great parties, uh, get a good job, or get what you need to go on to the next thing that you need for that good job. The 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 answers that you get when you kind of talk to your maybe in your families, like if you're talking to your mom and your dad, or maybe your grandparents or your neighbors, folks from church, so at home or in the community, the this will of course vary. Your mileage will vary on this one depending on your family and what kind of home you're in. But the kind of the stereotypical answer is going to be something along the lines of getting a good job. You go to college in order to get the training that you need to be able to get a good job. And then and then where that is the answer, it can be tricky if your purpose for going to college is to get a degree in the liberal arts or in philosophy or the classics, because the people that want you to go to college to get a good job will wonder where the local classics factory or philosophy factory is. How are you going to get a job in philosophy, kind of thing. The other thing that you might hear from family members, people in your local community at church or whatever, is that you're going to go to college to find a spouse. You go there because that's where you're going to get a husband or a wife, which is also a possibility. It's a true thing that happens. It's a thing that really, really happens. Going there for that purpose, I don't know, but that is a purpose that people have for going to college. If you were to ask the same question just kind of out there in the business world, this is where it gets kind of interesting for me, because in the business world, employers will typically say, maybe not so much to you, but maybe to each other, in kind of in the hiring realm, the hiring part of the company. Uh, the One of the things you'll notice when you apply for a job at a bigger company or at kind of a higher level job, not necessarily, working at the gas station or a restaurant or fast food restaurant or something, like entry level jobs. But when you start trying to move up in the rankings, I guess, of a company, you'll notice that the job listing often, if not always, requires a bachelor's degree. So there's, for some reason, the business world requires a bachelor's degree to get in. And the the conversations that happen kind of in the hiring realm, the hiring departments, is that the purpose of the bachelor's degree we think the purpose of the bachelor's degree is to prove, like, I can be an engineer because I have an engineering degree, or I can be a teacher because I have a teaching degree, which is kind of true depending on the career field you're going into, but it typically is to prove, the way they typically interpret the bachelor's degree and why they require it is because they want to know that you have a minimum level of knowledge. But what they're talking about is like general education knowledge, like core knowledge. You're capable of reading, you're capable of writing, you're capable of communicating. That's what they want to know. You can do the math that's required for a job. Um, and there was a time in the United States and in the world when those things were obvious. Anybody who graduated from high school, anybody who went through 10th grade of high school knew those things. And then there was a time when that wasn't the case anymore. And so they made, well, actually, what they started doing was they started making tests. So in the same way that many colleges require you to take a test to prove that you're capable of getting into that college, or to prove that if you get into that college, you'll be able to do the schoolwork, you'll be able to take the tests and stuff there. They make you take this preliminary test, the SAT, the CLT, the ACT, or sometimes they've had their own tests. That used to be the case in the business world. Big companies developed their own tests, and the purpose of those tests was to prove that you had the basic skills that would be required for that job, communication skills, for example. But one of the companies that did that was sued, and they lost, and now those tests have gone away. And so companies don't typically do that unless it's like it's not for general knowledge, general skills. It's for like a specific skill. You have to prove that you know how to use this particular machine, for example. They're allowed to do that, but they're not allowed to do it for general skills. So what ended up happening was all of these companies then started saying, well, you just have to have a bachelor's degree because it's the only way we can know for sure that you have general knowledge, general education requirements met. Um, the other side of the bachelor's degree, the other thing that the business world will say is that they require the bachelor's degree because it's a way for them to know that high school student or kids that have come out of high school are capable of committing to a project long term and finishing it. And so it's a way of proving that you could commit to something for 4 years and finish it out, see it out, complete it to the end. Because straight out of high school, you haven't done anything to prove that to them because you went to high school mostly because the state and your parents made you. But if you go to college, you're doing that by choice. And so you're by your own choice making a commitment for 4 years and you've completed it. So those are the kind of the two things that the business world looks at. They want you to have a bachelor's degree to prove that you have the ability to communicate and to prove that you can finish what you start over a long-term project. There's a very interesting book that if you've not read it, or if you're one of the parents on here, if your high schooler has not read this, you may find it interesting, worth reading. But it's a book called The Best Things in Life by Peter Kraft, and it's a series of dialogues, Socratic dialogues between Socrates and these two kind of college students. And the Socrates character is having the conversation with them about the purpose of college and why they are going to college and what they're trying to do with their education. And it's very interesting. It has a lot of insights and asks a lot of questions that you or your student, your child is probably asking, that would help them to help them to think through some of those things when it comes to what your next step is, what their next step is going off to college. The very first dialogue in the book is between Socrates and a guy named Peter Pragma. So he's the pragmatist, Peter Pragma. And Peter Pragma he's already in college, but he's studying for a test. And Socrates asks him why he's studying for the test. And he says he's studying for the test to get a good grade. Why does he want to get a good grade? so that he can get his degree? Why does he want to get a degree? So that he can get a good job. Why does he want to get a good job? So he can make a lot of money. Why does he want to make a lot of money? So that when his kids go to college, he can afford it. Why does he want his kids to go to college? So that they can get a degree, so that they can get a job, so that they can make money, so that they can pay for their kids to go to college. And the Socrates character basically just, well, he just straight up asks him, well, that's circular reasoning. You're living your life on a wheel. And have you ever stopped to ask what the purpose of the wheel is? Why is the wheel there? And why are we following it? Why are we just running this wheel? Which is a good question. And it's a question worth wrestling with, to the extent that the purpose of college is about getting a job. Are we just jumping onto this wheel, this circle, and we're just perpetuating the circle? Or is there some other reason that we want that job, some other reason that we need that job, and some other reason we need to go to college for that job, or whatever it is, right? So the 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 thing that's of interest here in for Peter Craig, his Socrates character, and for us then is trying to identify what is that real reason, the real purpose of college. Um, all of those answers that people around us giving, whether it's our parents or grandparents or pastors, people from church, business leaders, um, online ranking systems, whatever it is, all of those things play a part in, I mean, they're real things that people go to college for, and they're not necessarily, it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's more of the value of those things. um Going to a party is not, well, it depends what kind of party is, of course. So I'm not promoting any sort of wicked behavior here, but going to a party in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing or an evil thing. um we go to birthday parties, right? Parties are parties. They can be. They might not be. But going to a school because it's a party school and is famous for the parties that it has, well, there might be something worth reconsidering in our decision making there. Um, and then to the extent that we're going to a school for skills to get a job or credentials to go on to the next level, well, then again, the harder question we have to ask is why enter the wheel in that way? And am I really just getting that job to enter the wheel, or is that job somehow kind of breaking out of the mold, somehow breaking off the wheel? And then if it is, in what way? um and so and of course then there's the finding a spouse, and find a spouse, that's great. um God bless you in that search. The 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 purpose of the college has to be, to the extent that it's any one of those things, that purpose needs to be thought through a little bit. It needs to be pushed back against a little bit. It needs to be challenged somewhat, and that's what Peter Craig is trying to do in that book. So it's worth reading and it's worth considering. I think the hope maybe is that in this first session here this afternoon, that I'm going to tell you what the purpose of college is, but sadly I'm not. I'm just going to talk about what the purpose of college is, generally, kind of in our world, right? In the world around us, what it's saying. Because I think that while getting a job and getting credentials so that you can move on to the next level and finding a spouse, all of those are lovely things. And those are all things worth considering and worth doing. I think there's something more to the purpose of college than any of those. And to the extent that I have to do it for one of these reasons, I want to add this, I want to make this other thing a part of it. But if I can do it for that, and then these things are the added part, that's even better. If I can pursue this thing, which I'm not telling you what it is yet, but if I can pursue this thing, this real benefit of college, and these things happen, wonderful. If I pursue these things and this thing happens, and I can try to help make this happen, then almost as wonderful. But if I set this aside, then I'm really just entering the rat race. I'm really just getting on that wheel, just running around in that circle, and I don't even understand why. So as much as I think you might want me to say what this is today, I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. So this is a cliffhanger, like a television show that's to be continued. Sorry, but we're gonna get the to be continued tomorrow. We're gonna talk about the real benefits of college and what that thing is, and how we can pursue that and look for that in our college. So, um, yeah. Well, let's leave it at that. All right. So there we go. The purpose of college. Tomorrow we'll talk about the real benefits of college. And now I'm going to take this. I'm going to kind of hand this off to Greg Wilson, or Greg Wilson, Greg Wilbur. Sorry, sorry, Greg. Where Wilson came from. All right, so Greg Wilbur is at New College Franklin. I'm going to spotlight him so he can take over. And yeah, there you go. Greg, welcome. And why don't you, yeah, tell us all about New College Franklin.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. I don't want to steal your thunder from tomorrow, but I am going to talk a little bit about what the purpose of college is with regards to what we're doing here at New College. So hopefully that will overlap nicely with what you have to say tomorrow. But yeah, I'm part of the founding of New College. We're in our 15th year here in Franklin, Tennessee. We are currently on a beautiful snow day. I'm looking out the window at about 8 inches of snow. I had hoped to have some students with me to be able to talk back and forth a bit, and so you can get a little bit of taste of classes. And that's not going to happen in the same kind of way. Although there are several students who are currently studying in my house, so I may drag them in here in a moment, just so you get a little bit of a picture of what we're about. We're a 4-year liberal arts Christian college, and when I say liberal arts, I'm talking about the classical liberal arts, the trivium and quadrivium, which is distinctive from what a lot of people think about with regards to liberal arts. When there's a lot of colleges out there that will say they're liberal arts college, and what they mean by that is more of a broad-based humanities concept, and not specifically what would have been the historic classical Southern liberal arts. So what we talk about with regards to education and when we talk to prospective students, we generally talk about things like, it is important, in terms of being able to provide for family to do those types of things in terms of vocation and job. But the bigger question is not what you'll be doing in 4 years, but who will you be in 4 years? What will you become? And what that looks like during the college years, not just in terms of academic development, but also what that means in terms of spiritual formation, what that means in terms of walking together as in friendship with classmates, with professors. And part of what we've done in terms of the structure of New College is to make that an integral part of who we are, with small class sizes, with discussion-based pedagogy, and the opportunity to do so with a group of friends, and that becomes very much part of the conversation, very much part of what the learning process looks like. I mean, ultimately, our purpose, in terms of life, is to know and love God, and to serve and love our neighbor. And so, what does that look like in terms of how you grow into that? What do you need? What do you need to be able to do that? How do you grow in wisdom that is indeed the case? One of the things that we've talked about as well, and recognize this is obviously not new with us, is that God has made us with certain certain elements of what it means to be human. And so, a true education is what it means to be more truly and fully human. And God has made us to be thinkers. God has made us to be makers. God has made us to be worshipers. And all of those come into play. And it's not just a matter of accumulating knowledge. It's not just a matter of cultivating the things that you know, but that's important in terms of the world that God has made and understanding more of who He is. But He's also made us fully body, soul, and spirit. And because of that, we also make things. There's not just in terms of the fine arts, yes, certainly that as well. But we use our hands all the time, whether it's making bread or fixing a bicycle or figuring out how to fix something in the backyard. All those things require the use of our hands, and taking ideas and putting them into practice and living those things out. Truly, from a biblical sense, you don't truly know something unless you can do it, unless you can actually live it out. And so the idea even of knowledge is not just accumulation of facts, but actually living those things out. And because of that, also, God has made us to be worshipers. And so we respond in awe and gratitude and wonder to the world that He has made. And part of that is understanding more deeply the world that He has made, how He has worked through history and works of providence, and in terms of men and nations and literature and philosophy and ideas, but also in how He's created the world to be. As Roman 1 talks about, He has revealed Himself in the things that He has made, even His invisible attributes. So creation itself speaks to who God is. And so that's part of why the trivium and the quadrivium is the way it is. It's not just the study of ideas and language, but also the study of number, the study of creation, the study of those attributes and character and nature of God. And that's part of the soul of our curriculum. And I'll walk you through some of how we go about that. But that's our foundation of why we go into to what we're doing in terms of the pedagogy. There's a lot of things that go into thinking about college. One of the joys that we have at New College is, even if as we come alongside students or families, even if students don't wind up coming here, we hope that our conversation at least helps them think a little bit differently about what higher education could look like and what to look for and how that can be the case. And that's a beautiful thing, that there's um, New College is not for everybody, but there are other places and that may suit what God is calling you into, and what He calling you into in terms of being fruitful. So I have a PowerPoint here that I hope will work. New College, Franklin, Tennessee. This is the facility where we meet. We're in a beautiful small town just south of Nashville, Tennessee. And there's a beautiful old town center, and we're a block off of the city square. Our the mission statement, vision statement of New College. Are you seeing all these pictures too on the side, or just? Aha.
Yes, we can see them. Well, I see the guy with the bagpipes. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. So. Yeah, so our vision statement: under the lordship of Jesus Christ, New College, Franklin disciples students through the liberal arts for wisdom, virtue, and service. And one of the things about as you look for colleges, um, there's a lot of beautiful language out there that's well intended and well meant and sincerely meant, and beautiful pictures. And I get that. And I'm about to show you some more beautiful pictures and some beautiful language. Part of what you need to do as you look at various colleges is try to get underneath that in terms of what it is that you're truly desiring in terms of higher education, where the Lord is calling you, and how that matches up with the gifts that you have. Um, but we're sincere about what it means to walk with students. It's not just the academic element, but the discipling elements, the opportunities to sit over coffee, over lunch, over breakfast, to talk about issues of life. Not just how are you doing in class, not just did you understand that point, but how are you growing spiritually? How are you adjusting to the community? Where are the ways in which you see the Lord working in your life? What does it mean to grow in wisdom? And as I said before, that's also not just knowing things, but actually putting them into practice. Virtue is a beautiful thing, and historically has been very much a part of education, but has also become a bit of a buzzword. But what does it truly mean to grow in virtue, and to be able to balance what it means um, to do the right thing for the right reasons? And not just know the right thing, or not just follow your instincts or your belly, but to know why you should grow in certain ways. And the purpose, and again, is service, to serve and love those around us. Yeah, okay. Group of students having lunch outside the facility. I love this quote from Samuel Morrison, because it really gets at the heart, I think, of what true education is. And they keep moving. Book learning alone might be got by lectures and reading, but it was only by studying and disputing, eating and drinking, playing and praying as members of the same collegiate community in close and constant association with each other and with tutors, that the priceless gift of character could be imparted. It's that whole idea too, that There are some things that can't be taught but must be caught. It's part of being a part of a community, part of those conversations that happen off the cuff in the hallway at a professor's home, as you pass one another. And that's part of the beautiful part of the curriculum at New College, because we have one major, which is intentional, and liberal arts major. I'll get to that more in a minute. But everybody has read the same books, and so it's. I remember when I was in college, I had multiple classes in which I never saw any of those people from that class ever again, all my years in college. But to be able to have the same people in classes who have read the same things in different years, and to be able to enter into that conversation and know that what you're reading this semester can be talked about next semester and can be talked about 2 years from now. In most traditional programs, everything is segmented and siloed into a particular semester, and you don't have the beautiful interconnection of what it means by, uni veritas, one truth, that these things are interconnected. And so you can build upon thought, because indeed, that conversation, that association with one another and with tutors happens. And it happens not just in the classroom, but also all the elements of life, of eating and drinking and playing and praying. Part of the questions as you think about college, how do you know specifically that what we're doing here at New College might be for you? So here's just kind of a number of questions that kind of, I think, articulate how we think about what we're doing, and how to maybe help you think about what it is that you're looking for. You enjoy reading and talking about ideas for the purpose of application. Once again, it's not just about what you're thinking about, but can you actually apply these things? What difference does this make to your own life and to those around you? You value discussion-based instruction and interaction. Most of our classes, almost all of them, are reading original text and then entering into class and discussing those texts. We don't use lecture format. The purpose is to engage with the ideas, to ask questions. There's a big difference between going into a classroom and having somebody tell you what the ideas of the text are, or how you should think about a particular author, and then wrestling with it for yourself. I mean, we want students to be able to own the answers, because they've gotten to the answers through the hard work of thinking through it, and not just a shortcut to being given the answer. And that takes a lot more time, but it's important that it becomes your own, and that it's something then that you can think about and defend, and to be able to talk about with others. As well, you appreciate the parallel development of spiritual and intellectual life. Education is inherently theological. You can't get around the fact that it's dealing with heart issues as well as intellectual issues. So it's not just a matter of what you're thinking, but also how are you wrestling with this? There's a repentance aspect of education, because for everything that you learn, you then become responsible for. And for everything you become responsible for, you realize how you have failed those things in the past, and how you've had erroneous ideas, and how you have to reshape your thinking, and how you need to live differently because of that. You welcome growing together as a community to serve and provide accountability. What does it mean to truly live together in a community of friendship? That those relationships matter. That it's not just folks you see for an hour at a time in a classroom, but you're actually seeing these folks day by day and interacting with them in beautiful ways, and they get to know you and you get to know them. Same thing. What does it mean to walk together in friendship, and to have the intellectual development be the basis of that, but that the community be an extension of that. Part of this means, in a small environment, that you desire to walk in a discipleship and mentoring relationship, which means, the blessing of being known. That there's this opportunity, and which is something that we long for, and it's also something that we sometimes fear a bit. But what does it mean to be truly known? To have someone guide you and talk with you and mentor you, not just through studies, but what does it mean to be a follower of Christ? What does it mean to grow in grace? We also believe there's life outside the classroom. It's not just about your studies, but there's, as I said before, we're body, soul, and spirit, and all of those things are interrelated. Being part of the community, being part of a church, being part of a situation in which you're not just always with peers, but you're interacting with a variety of different ages of folks, of families, of grandparents, of retirees. And that means also just having fun together and enjoying the time that God has given us to do that. In addition, you long for vocational passions to be ignited with greater clarity and wisdom. I mean, a lot of what we wrestle with at this time of life is, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to develop in certain areas? And there's sometimes I feel like a lot of pressure with that, and also a lot of sense of paralyzation, of not being able to make a decision. I mean, there are so many options out there, and it's very easy to think that, yeah, you might, quote, make the wrong decision, and that's going to set you on a wrong trajectory. You're not quite sure which way to go, and part of the desire of of New College is to get the clarity to be able to make those decisions, and be able to walk into that. Um, and we know we God has given us particular gifts and particular passions. What does it mean to serve Him in those areas? Um, and so part of also with the curriculum that we have, it enables you to taste and to develop all sorts of ideas that then feed into your particular vocation or calling. Had a student a number of years ago who was interested in coming to the college, but he's a singer songwriter and was looking to pursue a music career, which he's doing currently. He's graduated and is doing that. But as a prospective student, I told him that coming to New College to study the liberal arts would make him a better singer and songwriter. Um, Not just because we do have some music classes, but not just because of the music classes, because it was going to develop who he was as a person. And because of that, that was going to overflow into the type of music that he wrote and what that meant in terms of following those particular vocational passions. Also, with regards to studies, you believe that wisdom for the present is best informed by great minds of the past. There's a reason that we read a lot of what are called the classics or the great books, or entering into the conversation of the great questions. These things are old, but they're ever new. They're significant questions because they're still the same questions that we're asking now. As C.S. Lewis talks about, the authors of the past have a much better perspective than just reading the authors of our own time. And because of that, we do read the classics unapologetically and enter into those conversations and those discussions, and use that as the foundation for conversation as we work through the various aspects of the curriculum. Because of these things too, then you respond to the wonder of God's creation and providence with gratitude and awe of the things that He's made, at the ways in which He has ordered the universe to be, and has so ordered our lives. As I mentioned before, true education necessarily requires the blessing of being known, and that can sometimes be a scary thing, but it's something also that we long for, and um, that's part of the beauty of having a small college in which you can be known. You see in front of you an overview of curriculum, just kind of give you an idea of how we go about this. Because we have one degree program in the liberal arts, we're able to have a holistic approach to the classes that we teach. That there are ideas that flow in between the various classes. We don't like to talk about subjects. We talk about the idea of disciplines. And you're entering into the discipline. The word, it's an important word with regards to what it means to be a disciple, what it means to discipline ourselves in a certain area of study, but also what does it mean to grow in a certain ability in an area of study. And so you see the lines that go across. The first discipline would be the moral philosophy courses, the foundations, antiquity, Christendom, and modernity. readings in philosophy and in literature and some theological works as well, that walk through the various ideas and as they have developed, but how they're also in conversation with one another, and how those ideas flow in between various thoughts of literature and historical events and the philosophy and how that develops. The beauty of that too is that you see things like um, as you study one thing in one class, you see the connection in another class, and you can bring in the conversation that you had in previous years, because this is a flow of ideas and an interaction of ideas, and we have the freedom and the ability to enter into a conversation. We do have a theological foundation, so the next one there, the discipline of theology. The first year is a theology seminar, giving a basis of understanding of biblical doctrine. There's a year and a half of studies in Greek. The second half year is a class or a labora on spiritual disciplines. It's one of the things we've learned over time. I think it's probably apparent in a lot of our lives. We talked about the idea of spiritual disciplines, or even the necessity or the importance of having a devotional life, but we don't always get the instruction or the help in how to do that. What does it mean to enter into various disciplines, whether that's fasting, whether that's service, whether that's various aspects of time? What does it mean to actually study scripture in a particular way? And then the fourth year, sacred theology, is uh, to enter into conversation with original text from the church fathers through medieval period, Reformation period, um, and enter into the conversations and wrestling with the ideas that the church has wrestled with throughout various epochs. Of how do you wrestle with and how do you come to conclusion of various theological issues that were, especially those that were under contention, and to actually enter that conversation and not just learn the doctrine of it, but the discipline of thinking through it. With regards to the next line of the trivium, disciplines, composition, logic, first year, rhetoric, second year, creative writing, which is fiction and nonfiction, art of personal essay, as well as creative fiction. And then fourth year is a combination of poetics and capstone project, which is something that is the highlight of what you've learned over the 4 year period, and how that plays out in sometimes particularly with a various passion or a particular sense of calling. With regards to the quadrivium, we're distinct in the fact that we give 4 years to the 4 arts of the quadrivium. So arithmetic, geometry, harmonia, and cosmology, music, and astronomy. I'll take a moment here just because this is probably where we get the most number of questions. When we talk about arithmetic, that's in terms of the quadrivial art of arithmetic. So that's Euclid. That's currently they're reading from Plato right now in the second semester. It's dealing with the idea of number. It's dealing with concepts of the one and the many. It's not just addition, subtraction. It's very much the idea of number and how that relates. Geometry, once again, going back to Euclid, what does it mean to look at number in relationship, in proportion, and how that then applies to other areas and aspects of life. With regards to harmonia or music, this is the study of the true idea of harmony, of what does it mean to hold things in tension. The application of that is discussed with the concept of music, but it's much further than that. There are theological considerations, there are philosophical considerations, there are aspects of the nature and physicality of sound with regard to physics. There's significant issue with regards to the idea of time and how all those things interplay with what it means to make things that are discordant now harmonious. And that is there's a lot to unpack in there. And then cosmology or astronomy is the application of that in movement over time. And that's everything from understanding the constellations and the stories of the constellations and the sacred aspect of cosmology to the workings of how the universe works. So that's a distinctive element of our curriculum, but we see that as essential as understanding the world that God has made and how that then relates to the other studies. And then there's a practical track. So the music class first year is very much hands-on. The art class is also very much hands-on. Literally, I mean, its first semester is drawing, and second semester is sculpture. It's part of the beauty of interconnectedness is, while you're studying two-dimensionality in geometry, you're doing pen and ink drawings. As you start sculpture is when you start studying, platonic solids, and you're dealing with three-dimensional elements of geometry. And so you're talking about it in one class, but actually experiencing it in another class. And the preceptorials are electives. There are 4 each year. You need 8 total. And those are 8 weeks classes that cover anything from a particular author to economics to political theory to the art of film to travel. We had a trip to New York City last year with the seniors, to microbiology, any number of things that are more of a focused study on a particular area, but utilizing the elements that we've learned in the other classes into a particular area of study. Those are a lot of fun, particularly. Those are even smaller classes. One I was talking to somebody the other day, like, why can't you just have a stack of books and go read on your own and learn these things? And to an extent you can, but part of the beauty of true education is with whom you read. Is as important as what you read. And so the conversation that happens when you have a tutor who is guiding you through a text and who is asking questions and responding to your questions and directing a conversation. But it's not just, hey, you need a great professor. Yes, you do need that. You need someone to guide the conversation. But your classmates as well are significantly important because we all have various gifts and weaknesses. And the ways in which, as the body of Christ, we come together around a table, literally around a table, around a text, is to hear from one another and to wrestle with the truth of what we're reading with one another. And there are things about a text that somebody else in that class is going to understand that you don't, that's going to help your perspective, and vice versa. There are times in which, somebody's trying to explain an idea and just can't quite get it across in a way that you understand, but somebody else can. And so the significance then is how we do this together, which means, from the school perspective, that you can have a professor teach the same book every year. Right now, the freshmen are reading the Iliad, but the reading of that text is going to be different every year, depending upon what students are in that class, what conversations they have, what questions they have, what the things that they wrestle with. Even as the tutor helps to shape that conversation or to ask leading questions, they still allow that conversation to develop in terms of what the students are wrestling with. And that's a beautiful part of entering into a text, and the fact that it's still alive, that there's still things to learn. A little bit about our community before I wrap this part up. Historic city, founded in 1799. The Battle of Franklin was here. It's a beautiful town, just 20 minutes south of Nashville. Unfortunately, it's too beautiful. More and more people want to come live here and come visit here. Of course, these idyllic shots don't help any. This is Main Street area with the square. I don't know how they got all the cars gone, but this is essentially what downtown looks like. Here it is at night. We have all these festivals throughout the year, which is a lot of fun. They close down the streets and have all sorts of vendors and crafts folks, and tens of thousands of people come and wander around and enjoy the festivities. Beautiful homes in this area, and as I said, we're just very close to Nashville, just south of Nashville, about 20 minutes. And in Nashville, we have all these opportunities from the full size replica of the Parthenon to you see up in the upper left hand corner the Schermerhorn Concert Hall, which is one of the best in the world. We have Broadway shows come through, Nashville Ballet, Nashville Opera. Um, we have Major League Soccer, football, and hockey, um, as well as minor league baseball. Multiple colleges in the area and art museums. Also, beautiful places to walk and hike in this area. So there's a lot of things to do very close by. So it's beautifully situated. Also, very closely situated to an international airport, and so getting to and from this area is very easy as well, which is very helpful. Another beautiful quote um, that I think talks a lot about what we're about. If I can keep the screen up here, um, to live content with small things, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, wealthy, not rich, to listen to stars and birds, babes and sages with open heart, to study hard, to think quietly, act frankly, talk gently, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is my symphony. That's part of what we desire for our students, to grow into that, to what it means to be truly human, to to live in a way in which God has called them to be fruitful. Um, there we go, and and to see what that looks like student by student, and that's not going to be the same for everyone. It's part of calling those things out of who God has made you to be, and to live those things out, and recognize that through the wisdom of those in the past, there have been certain texts and certain ideas and certain conversations that have helped those things along, to help develop thinking, help develop our knowledge and our wisdom in those areas, and to participate in that, to be part of that, but then recognize that God has called us to be fruitful in particular things, and that's part of we talk about that a fair amount too. The difference between being fruitful and productive. With productivity, there's very much a sense of scarcity and competition that it's very easy to look at the quantitative aspect of your grade is higher than my grade, you did better than I did type of thing. There's a competitiveness to that. And how many things did you produce at the end of the day? How many boxes did you pack? How many bushels did you pick? As opposed to what does it mean to grow in fruitfulness? Is it productive to contemplate a paragraph or a poem for 30 or 45 minutes? You don't really have anything physically you can show for it. Is it fruitful? Oh yes, oh yes. And so the difference of being unapologetic of being fruitful as opposed to productive. Yes, we need to be productive in various ways, but to also recognize what it means to live fruitfully. And the beauty about fruitfulness, one, it's a gift of the spirit, and there's a spiritual component there, of course. But the beauty of fruitfulness is it's something that can be shared, and there's an abundance of that. You can be fruitful, and I can rejoice in your fruitfulness, and I can be fruitful, and you can rejoice in that. And we're not competitively seeing who's the most fruitful, because we both benefit from that. And that's part of what it means to be in the body of Christ. We have these different gifts and these different abilities, and because of that, we all have something that we can bring to the table that we're discussing, that we're around a text or in a community. I think there's the sense of this desire to be a Renaissance person, to be able to know something about everything, to be able to be good at everything. And there are those people historically who have been able to do that. I think, though, that there are times in which we spend far too much time trying to shore up our weaknesses than to develop our strengths to greater degrees. and allow those people with strengths around them to serve us in our weakness, and recognize that that's part of what it means to be the body of Christ, because we have this desire to be self-sufficient. We have this desire to pull ourselves up from our own bootstraps, and that's not what it means to be a follower of Christ. Yeah, that there are ways in which we need to serve one another and love one another and recognize that His strength is made perfect in our weakness, and be able to then, together study these texts, together live in community, together grow in grace. And that's the friendship aspect of not just the intellectual development, which is significant and important, but also the spiritual development, which is of utmost and eternal importance. And those things go hand in hand, and that's part of why New College exists. As I said before, we're just a little bit about us. We are around 50 students this year. We intend to keep it small. We're looking at a little bit of a larger cohort this coming fall, but still keeping class sizes around 14, 15, 16 students, so that we can have those conversations. And that's an important part of what we're about. We have accreditation through tracks, and so in terms of where our students have gone and what they've done post graduation, everything from finance to politics, to medicine, to law, to starting businesses, to ministry, mission work, fundraising, pastoral work, counseling, teaching. Students have done any number of those types of things here and in around the country and abroad. One thing that when we started the college 15, 16 years ago, kind of thought it would be more regional, but from the very beginning, students started coming from all over. So we've had students from, I think, almost 30 states at this point. We currently have students from Alaska and California, Oregon, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Florida, Iowa, Michigan. We've had students from Montana and Washington State, um, and several from Canada as well. So we have students from all over the place, which is really fun to have those different places represented. Um, even to have snow right now. I think we had more snow than one of our Colorado students had over Christmas, so he's enjoying that. So that gives a sense of a little bit of diversity and not just the sameness that yes, we're all after the same things, but we all have different experiences and where we've come from, either theologically or regionally, and that enriches the community as well. There's lots of things I could talk about with regards to community life and activities and those types of things, which are pretty typical. I mean, we go to the symphony at times. We about to go to an opera here this month. We have various feasts throughout the year that different houses in the college support and put on. Um, and those activities flow throughout the year. We have daily prayer each day, about 20 minutes, in which we read psalms and chant psalms and pray and sing hymns. That's an important part of grounding ourselves and remembering why we're here, and that it's a very good reminder of the spiritual connected life, of what it means to be a worshiper, and that's an important part of the college life as well. Students live in apartments or with families. We help them set that up, but let them work out the arrangements. We don't have dorms, so we keep things really clean in terms of campus life because of things like that. We don't, and that helps us keep the cost down because we're not having to pay for aquatic centers and administrative buildings and groundskeepers and all those types of things. We're able to concentrate on what truly matters, which is what happens in the classroom, on teachers and on the relationship of teachers and students and the actual teaching process, and what education was meant to be, what education was supposed to look like. And that was kind of even the impetus for why we existed, looking at how higher education had fallen so badly into almost a business model of how many students can we process through and what degree, and not what does it mean to actually grow a student in wisdom. And so we're turning to more of that Cambridge or Oxford tutorial model, in which we're having one-on-one conversations and small group settings, and helping students then grow intellectually and spiritually through that. So as I said, there's a number of those things which we can talk about more fully, but I'd love to hear if there's any questions, and particular things you'd like to hear about in terms of the life of the college, or anything that I've said that was confusing, because I'm sure there probably was. Like I said, this would have been much more fun with banter, but you got me instead, and that's okay. I see a few people leaning forward with questions coming, I think.
I was curious about campus visits.
Hmm.
Is that something you all do? And how do you go? I did actually email the office one time. When I click on the link, it says that there's a URL failure for campus visits. And so I don't know.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's very good to know. Yes, we love to have campus visits, because I think that's an important part of you getting to understand who we are. And so we do have prospective weekends, once one in the fall and one in the spring. The one in the spring is, I should have the dates in front of me. I think it's like the third weekend of March. Um, but it's a great time to and we actually have students sit in actual classes and interact with students and professors, and that's a good part of that. If those days don't work, we also schedule individual visits, because there's a lot of things you can talk about. As I said before, there's beautiful brochures in colleges that talk about, hey, we do these things, and conversation model and all that stuff. It makes a huge difference to actually see those things in person. And in terms of the students who, and I say that not just for us, but for other places as well. But I know that when I see students come to visit us, they leave often feeling more at home and more connected with people that they've met and with what we're doing than they ever could have just kind of reading about us. And so and I know, like I said, I know that's true when people visit other places as well. And you can't substitute the aspect of actually seeing those relationships in action, and what that dynamic looks like within the classroom. So yeah, if that link doesn't work, please feel free to call in, or to see one of the prospective weekends, or something along those lines. Well,
sure.
yeah,
Thank
we'd
you.
love to have, love to have people come. If I want to do pre-med, is there a path for me at New College? Yes, actually. We've had a couple graduates go into to medical field. One of our board members is currently part of the founding of the new Christian medical school at Belmont University. And one of the things that medical schools have discovered over time is that um, when somebody is pre-med, medical schools don't assume that you learned in your biology studies or pre-med studies what you needed for medical school. I mean, they start over. They teach you those things again. What they need, though, is somebody who can think, and somebody who can communicate, and somebody who can adapt. And those are the types of abilities that the liberal arts give you. And so the idea of being a liberal arts major and going to medicine is becoming more and more attractive to even traditional medical schools. But probably there would be a few classes that would be needed in addition to do medicine. But with foundation here and a few other classes, pre-med is certainly an option. Ministry classes, I'm not sure um, if there's anything intended beyond that in terms of like specifically going out and doing ministry in the community. We have had opportunities to do that and serve. We also have classes that are preparatory with regards to um, um, various texts or those types of things. Let me tie that also in. There's the question of associated with a particular church and denomination. We're not. We do meet in a church, which is a Presbyterian church, and I'm also on staff at the church. Our foundation is historically Reformed, but our students come from all sorts of theological backgrounds. And we don't require students to adhere to a particular theological tradition. And in fact, we welcome the opportunity to interact in that. So we have quite a few students who are Orthodox, Presbyterian, Baptist, non-denominational, Catholic, etc. you know, we're going to teach when we land, we're going to land on a particular place, but there's a distinctive there. But the richness of the community allows for much broader aspect of conversation with different theological traditions. Aerospace engineering pilot. We actually have I think an incoming freshman who's interested in being a pilot. I'm not sure about the aerospace element of that. There's, you know, once again, some of the specialized fields you might require. Like one of our students who went on to get a master's in a medical field wound up taking a few classes after she graduated from New College. Just a few things that she needed as prerequisites. But that took just a little bit of time for her to do that. But then she had all the other bases of what we had here. So something like aerospace might require something in addition. Depends on how the specificity of that. But then again, I mean, this is part of the frustration of our current educational system. A lot of these things would not have been questions if we had been able to do things the way that should or could unfold. So we're a bit of trapped between systems. So, you know, there's so much. It's highly significant what classical liberal arts training does for whatever field you're in. Some particular fields may require some other specific training to get into them. But I think it's still well worth it to have all that ability, as I said before, to make connections, be able to think clearly, to think boldly, to communicate, and to adapt. And those things will always serve you in whatever area. Job transitioning, we do some career planning, but also we have lots of connections and help with various positions and planning with that. With the capstone, some students have done internships, which have led into jobs as well, and that's been really helpful to be able to do that. With regards to transfer, you know, yes, we do allow transfer because we know that life happens, and you know, ideally, and as I said before, we have this beautifully constructed holistic curriculum, and we would desire somebody to walk through from the beginning to the end, and that's the ideal. But life is not always ideal, and instead of saying, you know, if you come to New College, you have to come in as a freshman, and that's the only way to do it, we enable transfer credits in to make that possible. So you have to spend at least 2 years here. So the junior year would be the last, entering as a junior would be the last opportunity to get 2 years here. But we do that, and we kind of process through traditional credits to see what that would look like in terms of a graduation path. Not a Catholic college, non-denominational, but Reformed Historic Presbyterian in foundation. As I said, we have students that are from various traditions. In terms of biology course, no, not anything specific in biology. In terms of the hard science in that kind of way, but more the traditional classical liberal arts.
Could you outline the application process, or is it fairly thorough online? Should I just go there?
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I probably should have mentioned that as well. Well, in terms of, I was glad to see far more juniors than seniors in the mix. Not that I'm not thankful for for seniors, but our next deadline for seniors is February 1st, and so there's just a few weeks if one were interested and they hadn't started the application yet. There is an application online. It goes through various questions, and you submit most of that online and references as well. And then we go through a process of reviewing that. So, like as I said, for this coming fall, the next round is February 1st, and so that's coming up pretty quickly. We are CLT school, and so that's part of the requirements, and that's pretty much outlined. I mean, if you have any questions, I mean, there's always people to ask and answer questions, as long as you don't click the one link that
do you not recommend starting, like you said, February 1st? How long does it take to fill out the application? Is there an essay involved? And things of that
Well,
nature?
let me say, I'd say the next round is due February 1st. And so it does take, yeah, there's some essays or submitting some essays that you've written, but also various essay form questions in terms of various questions. So it's extensive, but not overwhelming
Okay.
in terms of filling it out. So if you're thinking about for a senior for this coming fall, that's something I would get on very soon in terms of making sure you make that February 1st deadline. Because we have limited slots. Because we're trying to keep class sizes small, we're limiting the number of students, and not trying to be exclusive in that regard, but just making sure that we're able to do what we want to be able to do, to be able to serve students in that way.
You could use the word intentional.
Yes, that works too. Yes, very much so.
There you
Yeah. And that has all sorts of elements to it. It's not just, I mean, I see the question here about the CLT average ideal. Yeah, that's one factor. And that's it's helpful, but there are a lot of other factors as well. The disposition, the desire, other activities, etc. It's not just tied to particular numbers. And that's but that is helpful to know with regards to CLT. Let me see, I forget the average right now. It's pretty significant, but it's also widespread in terms of scores. Like as I said, it's not always. We're not operating with the idea that we have a drop dead number that in terms of admittance, because there are other factors. At the same time, scores tend to be in the 80s, 90s, 100s, but we have others in other realm as well. So that's a loose answer to that question. Like I said, that's one part of it, but the rest of the application as well. With regards to languages, we do teach Greek. That's one of those questions too. As a classical college, why don't you teach Latin? Because most likely most of you have had Latin in some form or fashion, but have probably not had Greek. So as a small college, making the decisions of what to teach, realizing that we could have a whole number of students coming in at all sorts of different levels of Latin. That's something that you can continue on your own, and students have continued on their own and actually taught even in the area. But Greek is something that's pretty new to everyone. So we're doing an elective this spring also in Hebrew, as a short elective as well. I might do one in Japanese here in the next little bit. Thank you for looking it up on our website and finding about the number that I didn't have in my head at the time. Yeah. So average is 87 in terms of CLT. As I said, that's an average, and that ranges from multiple folks. I think the important things too. We're not. Yeah, it's part of what we consider, but it's not everything. And we do, in addition to keeping tuition affordable, we do also have academic scholarships and need-based scholarships that are part of that as well. So wanting to be able to make it feasible for folks to be able to come, and recognize that most students will wind up working and needing to pay their way, or at least part of their way, and that's an important to have time to do that, but also make it affordable to be able to do that. Traditional grades. I have a love-hate relationship with grades, so I don't want to get too deeply into that right now. In terms of assessment, yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways in which there are elements of assessment, and some of those are graded papers, and some of those are assignments and so forth. But it's always in the context of conversation, and that's downplayed as much as possible. We have one professor this semester who has hidden their grades, and so that the student can come to them if they're concerned, or if he's concerned about them, he will go to them. But trying to de-emphasize that, because the importance is what you learn, obviously, and not numerical grade. And we keep having that conversation as faculty, like, really, what is the difference between a 92 paper and a an 88 paper, where and especially with regards to what you want a student to learn and how they're growing. So yeah, we do have grades and assessment, but we're not quite traditional, and we're still working on that. With regards to military, I think I probably need a little bit more information. So in terms of connecting with somebody in the office and talking about specifically that situation. Let me see. General, other than general classical education, specific things you recommend. Part of part of my in terms of our conversation or thinking is, I guess there are some particular things here and there, and that would probably get down more on the micro level. But we trust parents, and we trust the decision that you're making for your students, and don't want to necessarily dictate what you do or think you should or shouldn't do, or what we would want you to do, because you know your child better than we do, and so the decisions that you're making. Now, if there's a question of should I do A or B, yeah, let's talk about that. But generally speaking, we've always kind of shied away from saying, well, a new college student should have XYZ classes, or profile should look like this. Most of our students are come from a homeschool background, or co-op, or um, to a lesser degree a Christian school background. But we've also had there are also other folks too, and a lot of them tend to be musical. Our students almost they enjoy reading, they enjoy writing. If you look at a CLT score, those two parts of the CLT are always usually significantly higher than the quantitative. Not that we don't like good quantitative scores, but our typical students tend to score more in the verbal area. Part of it is the disposition to desire to enter into a situation in which you're going to be intentionally learning and intentionally known, and that you're not trying to be in a situation to get your ideas across, but to have your ideas actually challenged, and being willing to do so in humility. One of the things I tell freshmen, when you read a book, if you're only underlining the things that you agree with, you're not learning. You're just reinforcing your own prejudices and coming up with more ammunition for argumentation's sake. And so, part of that's that heart disposition of humility, of wanting to learn and being able to be challenged, and loving the truth. It is a big difference between, I have something that I think is significant that I want to say about this text, and I can hardly wait to say it, and somebody else said it before me in the conversation. Do I rejoice in the fact that there's a beautiful thought out there that we get to talk about? Or am I really sad that I didn't get to say it? And that tells you a lot about your heart disposition, and even your disposition towards education. Is it about making yourself look better, or thinking being a certain person in the classroom, or actually loving truth and not using truth, and recognizing truth is a person. Truth is Christ said, I am the truth. And what does it mean to enter into that and to love that, to love truth, to love Christ, and not just trying to make your own point or score points. We do have quite a number of classical conversation students. Neglected to mention that in the overall arch of things. GPA score, I'm not sure there's a minimum. And once again, it's a holistic aspect of the application. In terms of benefits of a liberal arts degree, that's one of those things I think that hopefully over the course of this week with Dr. Bianco, in terms of what college is for, in terms of the defense of what the liberal arts can do. I think the beautiful thing that I've seen in terms of our students, in terms of studying the liberal arts, is that it's the ability to connect things, to connect ideas, to connect things that don't necessarily seem to be related, but are, because all truth is God's truth, and all things hold together in Christ. To be able to make decisions because of that, to be able to do that boldly, to be able to do that courageously, to be able to talk about that, to be able to talk with anybody, to do so with charity, and um, that's it. That's the ability to write and to adapt and to think are not, those are skills that are at a premium right now in our culture, because that is not what's generally happening in higher education. You learn a particular skill or a particular trade or particular idea, which may or may not even be appropriate or used at the time in which you graduate. And so even highly skilled jobs, I heard recently they were riding in an Uber, and their Uber driver was an engineer, and his type of engineering that he studied in school had gone by the wayside, and he was trying to figure out what his next career was going to be. So even something that seems really secure in terms of like engineering, um, it's not always secure. Those things do change, and that's being able to adapt and be able to do almost anything is a significant thing. We're located in Franklin, Tennessee, which is right smack dab in the middle of Tennessee, about 20 minutes south of Nashville. So beautiful area of some pasture land and hillsides, but all sorts of amenities, and very close to a number of larger cities. Like even by car, we're like 4 hours from Atlanta, 8 hours from Chicago, 3 hours from Memphis, 5 from St. Louis, like 5 or 6 from Charlotte. So we're kind of like maybe 10 from DC, and I think you can actually drive to New York City in like 12 hours. So we're like right in the middle. So it's the beach is like 5 hours away too. That's the one thing we don't have. We have mountains or mountainous areas, but we don't have beach. But so there's a lot of things in the area. But yeah, so right in the middle of Tennessee in Franklin. See if I skipped anything. That's a general overview. There's, like I say, there are things you can see on the website, and one of the things I said earlier, and I'll reiterate, part of the joy of what we do is not just, yes, we want students to come to New College, but we want students to learn and to become truly educated, to become truly human, whether that's at New College or elsewhere. And if we can be part of that conversation to help you figure out where it is that God's calling you to be, that's a joy for us, even if it's not here in Franklin. And so, if you have questions, if you want to come for a visit, if you want to follow up on some of this and get a little bit more information, we'd love to enter into conversation with you. And there's a number of us who can help you with that and have those conversations. And so it's a fun part of this time. It can be a little bit of a scary time in terms of what decision to make, but it's also a beautiful thing where the Lord's leading. One more question here. Yeah, we do have musical groups. I started a choir a few years back, and we have, we had out of about 50 in the student body, we had about 30 in the choir, or over 30. So we did a Christmas concert this spring, and did some Handel, and did it in conjunction with a church. So we did Handel and Vivaldi and Oliello and Palestrina and a number of other things, and have sung in other locations around the area, and some things like that. We have several string players as well, and who played in the orchestra. And so we've got a number of things that are just kind of the life of that grow up out of the life of the college. It's a lot of fun. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all. And as I said, I encourage and look forward to follow up, especially if you contact the college, or contact me, just please mention that you're part of this group. I'd love to, because that'll give me at the very least I'll know what we talked about, and we can start from there or interact. But it's great to see you and have you part of this conversation, and blessings on you as you think through and pray through where it is the Lord's leading you, and this next step. It's an exciting time. It can be a bit scary, but it's also a beautiful testimony of being faithful and walking through the door that the Lord's opening for you, and in these next steps.
Greg, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing all that, fielding all those questions. You guys have some good questions. That's wonderful. So thank you all for attending today, and we'll be back same place, same time the next 4 days, the remaining 4 days of this week with some other schools. The recording will be sent out. If you have friends that are interested, pass this along to them. Pass along the recording so they can hear all about New College, and then invite them to the future calls. And just if I can just say one thing in closing, that because you guys asked a lot of questions about different classes and different degrees and the liberal arts and all of that stuff, and Greg, you touched on it, but it really is, what he said is absolutely true. It really is. With all the work that I do, I talk to college admissions, offices all the time. I talk to business leaders and people all the time, and more they want people, the higher level colleges like master's degrees, medical schools, law schools, and businesses. They want people that have studied a classical education, a liberal arts, in the way that Greg here was describing, a liberal arts education, because they want people that can think, they want people that can adapt. They've even said that in the medical field, I've had doctors tell me that the biggest problem they have in medical school is doctors, they're getting students that come through and they've only ever studied medicine, and they have no bedside manner. And they actually have to stop and teach people how to interact with other human beings properly, because they've not read enough stories. If you guys, especially for those of you who selected the Chronicles of Narnia, and Greg, I saw you did not pick the Chronicles of Narnia. For those of you who selected the Chronicles of Narnia, remember, the reason Eustace didn't know how to interact with the dragon's lair is because he had not read the right books. This is what this is. This is an education in which you get to read the right books so that you can do all of those amazing things you were talking about: medicine, pilots, military, engineering, whatever, all of that stuff. But you can do those things in the best way because you'll have read the right book. So New College Franklin would be an excellent option for many of you, I believe. Well, only 14 or 15 of you, because there's a limit on the number of seats available. But yeah, the New College Franklin is a school where you will read the right books. So thank you again, Greg. Thanks for sharing about New College. Thank you all for attending today. Have a good afternoon. Hopefully I'll see most of you again tomorrow.